Hello there. Davis Winn once again. We are here for the final episode for League of Liars, and for this final episode, I wanted to do things a little bit differently. Obviously, talking face to face to the camera, bit different than the normal voiceover of previous episodes. However, I wanted to do something different this time because, as I mentioned before, this final episode would be kind of my personal experiences, my final thoughts, stuff like that. And because of that, I thought this would be maybe a better way of showing how I feel. Before we get into things, I really want to start with kind of an apology. And it's because of this setting I'm currently in. Thankfully, I have this spare bedroom to go with that's completely empty. However, I don't have exactly a beautiful studio to record in, so you know what, we work with what we can work with, so let's just get right into it. We're going to start this episode off with each of my experiences with each of these leagues. My experiences, perceptions, what I learned, what I hope for in the future. So let's start with the first league, and that is baseball. Now, before we get really into this, let's state some few basic facts about myself. 20 years old as of right now, born and raised in St. Louis, Missouri. So with that in mind, of course, I was a hardcore St. Louis Cardinals fan. And it was fantastic. World Series in 2006, World Series in 2011. It was fantastic. The Cardinals were always winning, going to playoffs, getting to the championships. They may not have won it every time, but at least they got there. And that, you know what, was enough for me. But after 2013, 2014, I kind of distanced myself away from baseball. And mainly that was because of some other NFL things going on, and then we'll get to that in a second, but basically I was so focused on the NFL that I kind of lost my interest for baseball. And I really got a good outsider's perspective of the Cardinals fan base, how the team runs, and just the overall perception. And it really opened my eyes to a lot of things about the organization. First off, the Cardinals fan base is kind of old. Now, I don't mean that in a bad way, but usually your fan base is going to have lots of old people who've been going to the game since they were a young child. You're obviously going to have young children fans, everything few and far in between. But something I noticed with the Cardinals is that a lot of fans are usually older. It's a lot like, a good way to describe it is with Harley Davidson motorcycles. Your first perception is an old man riding a Harley Davidson. Sure, there are some younger people that ride these Harley Davidson motorcycles, but it's usually more elderly gentlemen and women. And that same thing could be said about the Cardinals fan base. Yes, you have plenty of young, energizing, youthful fans, but most of the fans, from what I noticed and experienced, they're well over the age of 40 and 50. And like I said, there's nothing wrong with this. It's just something odd I noticed from having an outsider's perspective of the Cardinals fan base. The second thing I noticed is that, we are not exactly the most classy fan base, I learned. Don't get me wrong, I'm going to defend St. Louis sports till the day I die. But when there is an obvious wrongdoing, I will call it out and condemn it. And let me tell you something, some Cardinals fans are disgusting and despicable for the actions they may have caused. Now, I'm not going to throw any specific names or any specific instances. I'm just going off my own personal experiences, so keep that in mind. Now, when it comes to the Cardinals, is that usually they try to, what's a good word? Be classy, like try to be like, oh, we're higher up, we're a higher tier baseball club. The Cubs, it took them over 108 years, and that was a big blow to Cardinals fans' egos. The Chicago Cubs. Because really, the biggest joke about them was the fact that, hey, it's been forever since they've won a ring. And then when they finally won a World Series after 100 and bazillion years, their biggest argument against Cubs fans was completely gone. They think, okay, we can't make fun of them about the World Series drought. What do we do? And it basically just turned into just mudslinging. And that is not acceptable in any way, shape, or form. You're supposed to have good sportsmanship. Yes, you can have a little bit of fun, but there's obvious lines that you do not cross. And I guess you could say, after a long look of the Cardinals organization, at least from an outsider perspective, one of the sentences that I came up with best was, the Cardinals fan base is basically the Red Sox fan base, except not as racist. That's basically what I came up with. Now, before you guys start going libelous with me on the Boston Red Sox, let's be honest, they've had a notorious history of harassment and racial slurs against opponents. That's just a fact. It's not an opinion. I've seen it, I've heard it. It's all in the news. It's obvious. Now, I'm not saying Boston fans are racist. I'm saying that the Boston Red Sox organization has had a notorious past. I know they've made great improvements to right their wrongs, and I applaud them for it greatly. But you have to understand that past is their past, and you cannot take that away. Let's get back to the Cardinals, though. The Cardinals went on a bit of a slump. They missed the playoffs for a few seasons, and oh boy, Cardinals fans were livid. It's as if they were kind of bandwagoning. So, here we are now. The Cardinals, once again, still haven't made the playoffs in a while. This season, they might actually make it back. They've got some good promise and potential, which will probably bring those bandwagon fans back into the ring. The real question is, why? Why are some Cardinals fans like this? Who knows? You're going to get bad fans in every single fan base. The question is how many? That's the real question. So, after a solid 5-6 years of looking at the Cardinals fan base from outside, looking in, it's pretty obvious things are not as all happy-go-lucky as they could or should be. But that's one of the good things, that I'm the kind of person who takes a wrong, I say, that is wrong. Let's fix it. Sometimes the best way to fix something is from the inside out. So, starting this season, I will follow the Cardinals more attentively, focus on the MLB as a whole more attentively, and hoping that I can be a sort of ambassador to help the Cardinals fan base get less notoriety. I think that would benefit both me, Cardinals fans, the Cardinals franchise, and the MLB as a whole. Especially for a sport that seems to be losing its popularity, I think this would be very beneficiary. Let's move on to the second franchise. That is my NBA team, the Toronto Raptors. Now this one is a fun backstory for me to tell. Now obviously growing up in St. Louis, we do not have an NBA franchise. The closest ones would probably be maybe Memphis Grizzlies, maybe Chicago Bulls, but I didn't want to cheer for them. I didn't even know who they were when I was making my decision, and that's the fun part. My decision to who I would cheer for in the NBA started when I was about 6-ish years old. I looked at all the NBA teams and decided, St. Louis doesn't have one. I should cheer for one instead. So, I looked at every single team, and you want to know how I decided? Who had the coolest name? Come on, the Raptors. A dinosaur. That's awesome. It's a lot cooler than the Wizards or the Magic. So, I chose the Toronto Raptors. And let's start with something obvious. We were not good when I started becoming a fan of them and following them. My first season of really intensively following the Raptors was the heartbreaking Game 7 loss to the Brooklyn Nets. The thing is about with the Toronto Raptors organization is that it's not really the owner or any of that's the problem, like with the Cardinals. It's mostly the fan base. I've noticed a lot with the Toronto Raptors fan base after the huge DeMar DeRozan-Kawhi Leonard trade. DeMar DeRozan, he loved Toronto and Toronto loved him back. Or so I thought. Once he was traded, the amount of shade that was thrown at DeMar DeRozan was so vile and unnecessary, it made me question my allegiance to this franchise at some points. How? How could you talk so bad about somebody who did everything he could? He did not perform to our expectations, there's no denying that, but DeRozan did what he could. Sometimes it just wasn't enough. And for some Raptors fans, sometimes enough isn't enough. What can you do? The GM Masai, I'm not a huge fan of him. He seems to be more interested in trading away loyal players for slightly better pieces? Slightly? Now you may be thinking, oh, if you're getting a better player in return, what's the problem? The problem is they're better for certain situations. I don't know. This is why I'm not a GM, because I sometimes know how to make good decisions every once in a while. Thankfully, the Raptors haven't had that much negative impact on me. I mean, yeah, a couple of chokes in the playoffs and some pretty bad trades, and the fan base can be a bit, but we've got a bigger fish to catch. Let's go through my NFL story. And then Stan Kroenke openly says that he intended on keeping this team in St. Louis. He fully intended it. People had their doubts, but they were constantly reassured. No worries, we would never abandon St. Louis as an NFL team. Or so we thought. Even though he had said this, rumors were starting to pile up. He had purchased the old Hollywood horse racing track in Inglewood. That's odd. Why would he do that? Oh, now there's even more rumors of relocation. Oh, the NFL is even thinking about relocation. Something's definitely not right here. It's because there wasn't something right there. Stan Kroenke, without telling a soul of the public media, never showing up to any St. Louis Rams games, never supporting the franchise, never putting in an ounce of effort into making them successful. And why not? He was busy, of course. Too busy prepping a relocation. That Inglewood horse racing track, he didn't buy it for the giggles, he didn't buy it for fun. He didn't even buy it to make like a mall or something. He knew what he wanted that mall to become. He wanted that to be the new stadium for the Rams. And it all became obviously clear. 2016 rolls around. The St. Louis Rams officially file for relocation. And that hurt. The moment when you realize the Rams, the franchise that you trusted, you loved, you supported without any shadow of a doubt, you gave them anything and you got nothing in return. And they openly said, we don't want to be here anymore. We want out of this town. And you have no idea how sick to that stomach that made me feel. To know that everything you had loved and worked for was going to be gone in mere days. I had my suspicions. I knew there was a chance they would move. Around 2014, 2013, I started following the Rams hardcore, the same way I followed the Cardinals, because I'd be watching Cardinals games all the time, but then I realized there's a good chance that move might happen. So I'm going to cheer for the Rams like I'm never going to see them again, because I think deep down I knew I wasn't going to. Then just a few days later, it was official. Stan Kroenke had gotten full approval from the NFL to relocate the Rams to Los Angeles. At that moment, it was official. the St. Louis Rams. The NFL franchise that I loved, supported, and gave my everything to was dead. And with it, my respect to the NFL, my respect to the Rams franchise, the players, management, coaching, all of them, I had lost all my respect for them. Now, to be fair, St. Louis did whatever they could to try to keep the Rams home. They had a stadium plan lined up, but deep down, if that stadium plan did succeed, Kroenke would have won. How? Because he wouldn't have to pay a dime for it. We would be on the hook. We had to rely on ourselves to save them. And if we did somehow save them, we would be in a financial turmoil unlike anything ever seen in human history. It was a losing battle from the start, yet we still tried. But it was all for naught. So, I was left in limbo. Days went by, I wondered, what am I gonna do? Should I just stop with the NFL? Should I just try to find a new team? Should I follow it, but just not have a team, kind of like NFL analytics? Well, I did decide to go to a new team, and that's what we're gonna cover next. Yep, I ended up as a Vikings fan. Now, here's the story. After the Rams left St. Louis, I was distraught. I didn't know what to do. But I came up with an idea that I saw online. There was this one kid who emailed every single NBA franchise asking, "Hey, I don't have a team, why should I cheer for you?" I decided to try that same playbook, and I got responses actually. I got responses from 4 franchises. First, from the Jacksonville Jaguars. Second, from the Atlanta Falcons. Third was from the Houston Texans. And the fourth one was from the Minnesota Vikings. Jacksonville's was a very mundane, robotic almost response saying, "Hello, we like growing our fan base. Let us know your address. We'll ship you a complimentary fan pack," which was just a bunch of little stickers and stuff, not really any monetary value. But it was something nice. I was actually considering becoming a Jaguars fan until I got the second email from the Atlanta Falcons. It was a personalized letter from a real person talking about how they could not imagine the pain I must have been through to see their franchise go. But they said, "If you come cheer for us, you won't regret it. We welcome you with open wings." I thought that was a bit cringy, but I felt that impact and was actually starting to consider them more. Then I got a letter from the Houston Texans. It was robotic. It had nothing to do with what I asked, so I automatically scraped them because that showed no passion or any sort of respect for me. Then finally, I got my 4th letter. It was very short, but it was very powerful. It's from a man named Steve Reed. He works for the Minnesota Vikings front office, and it said, "I have received several emails and calls from former Rams fans in your position. Here's my phone number. Call and let's talk." So, I called the phone, I talked to him. He's a great guy. Got to spend a lot of time on the phone with him. He's respectful, he's a great person, and I wish him nothing but the best. He's the man that convinced me to become a Vikings fan, and to his credit, back then it was a good decision. Even now I'd still say it was something I'm glad I did. It gave me a new perspective on some things, which is always a good benefit no matter where you are in life. So, my first year of NFL football with a brand new franchise. St. Louis was still reeling from the loss, watching the team they loved, the Rams. Now, we did enjoy that season a lot. They only went 4-12 and attendance was abysmal, so it was pretty fun to watch. Now, what wasn't fun to watch was the Minnesota Vikings. We had Sam Bradford as our quarterback that year, and knowing the Rams, I knew he was not gonna hold up that well. And he didn't. We started off 5-0, that's cool, but we went 8-8 at the end of the season. That's not good. Vikings. Also doesn't help that the soon-to-be all-star of our franchise, Teddy Bridgewater, suffered a horrific leg injury, so bad, amputation was considered. It was that bad that he might have not have been able to play a snap again, yet he did. That's how bad it was. So the question became, what now? Where do we go from here? Well, just got to keep going, unfortunately. The next season rolls around, there was hope. We had Case Keenum, another Rams quarterback. I didn't trust him. I thought this is just going to be another 8-8 season again. But no. Case Keenum performed like he expected to. Case Keenum succeeded. We got to the playoffs. And then that amazing game, the NFC divisional match against the New Orleans Saints. The first half was very hectic and exciting, but the fourth quarter was where all the magic shined. The Minnesota Vikings, field goal to take the lead. And when you know Minnesota Vikings kickers, I was not all too optimistic, but he made it. Hope. We have the lead. But the Saints come back. They kick a field goal. They have the lead again. We've got less than 30 seconds left. I thought, great, that's it. But then the catch happened. The Minneapolis miracle happened. That was one of the greatest moments I had ever witnessed watching the NFL. Pure, unadulterated joy. It was probably the greatest few minutes of my NFL life. Fortunately, next week came around and we just fell apart against the Eagles. Not much you can do, unfortunately. But then the next season rolled around, the 2018 season. That's when I started looking more into this franchise and saw a lot more problems. US Bank Stadium, where we play. Yes, the old Metrodome needed to get replaced. I mean, the roof collapsed. However, as I mentioned in the NFL episode, all that public money, even though the Wilf family could have easily afforded it, no, you still needed us to do it. Couldn't kick it out of your own pocket if you could. I thought, okay, I can still be a Vikings fan, of course. I just need to go out and condemn these wrongdoings. Obviously, we shouldn't have done that stadium deal. It was a terrible plan. Oh, that's right. Wilf asked, well, let's not say asked, he threatened to move the Vikings to LA before the Rams did. Yeah, that's not exactly good city relations as we've learned. And after this past season, with Kirk Cousins as our supposed hero, I knew we weren't going to make the playoffs. I knew we weren't. Kirk Cousins is not playoff-worthy quarterback. What a surprise. We didn't. We played the Rams. I was thinking, okay, let's go get some personal revenge. Nope. No, we didn't. And the worst part is watching the Los Angeles Rams, a team that I now despise with every fiber of my being. A team that I will never cheer for under any circumstance, no matter what. I watched them, let's be honest here, cheat their way to a Super Bowl. Now, it's not their fault. The refs made an obviously blatant call. And I know what you're saying. Oh, if the Saints would have won, maybe if they didn't throw an interception. Yes, that's absolutely true. Absolutely true. Once overtime started, that's the Saints' fault. Without a doubt. But what if that play was called? What if that pass interference was called? They're in first and goal. They could score a touchdown. They could kick a field goal. They would win. They would have won that game if that call was made. To call that ref ball is an understatement. And because of that, the LA Rams got to go to a Super Bowl that they didn't deserve to be in. How would that make you feel? The team that you loved backstabbed you, and then, just to make it dig a little bit deeper, are one win away from the kings of football. It's a dark feeling, and I wouldn't wish it upon my worst enemies. Let's put it into a more relatable perspective. Let's say you have a girlfriend or a boyfriend, and you love them. You've been around for years. And then the thought comes into your mind, when is the proposal gonna happen? When am I gonna get down on that knee and ask her to marry me? Then you realize right before, just minutes before you're about to do it, she goes up to you and says, I have a confession to make. I don't want to be with you anymore. That's what happened with the relocation. And even worse, in just a few short years, she's in her Super Bowl. She's happily married. She's making hundreds of thousands of dollars. She's got kids. You've got nothing. That's what it was. And after further looking into the Vikings organization, I just learned that the Vikings were the other side of that same coin. Doesn't matter which NFL franchise it is, you're gonna find an owner who's shady, deceptive, a player that isn't treated fairly, players that are classless, fans that are classless, management. It doesn't matter where you go in the NFL, you're gonna find something that's just not morally right. And like I said, nobody's gonna care. Nobody's gonna care. It's just football after all. What I'm trying to say is, it doesn't matter what franchise, it doesn't matter what. Cities should not lose their teams. And if they do, they better have a new team in pronto. Like the Cleveland Browns. After Cleveland lost their football team, they finally got it back after a few years. That is what should happen. You know what? It shouldn't even happen in the first place, because a proper expansion is the right answer. You don't have to move any teams around. You can just expand. No teams or cities get hurt in the process. But the NFL won't do that. That's not profitable enough. And I guess I'm going to make the statement while I'm here then. This is going to also be my official resignation from all things NFL. Don't expect me to watch another NFL game. You can also make the claim with the Minnesota Vikings. I am no longer a fan of the Vikings. It was a great few years. It was enjoyable. It was a learning experience. But I cannot in good faith cheer for any team in a league where money triumphs morality. I just can't. Maybe someday they'll change their ways. Honestly, I don't want St. Louis to get NFL football. Why would we want it? They'll just move our team again. If you're thinking, oh, come on, that's a bit of a stretch. They've done it twice before. What makes you think they're going to stop at 3? They're going to stop whenever they feel like it. Whatever's more profitable. So, let's just recap this. St. Louis completely got screwed over by Kroenke, who, let's not forget, he got someone killed. He screwed over St. Louis, moved the team to LA, and then decided, once they were in LA, to finally start caring and make the team good. Minnesota Vikings. The same coin, just a different side. I don't know how some people can cheer for the NFL after watching everything on here. It's your choice. You're free to make whatever choices you want in life. But you can't really give yourself the high and mighty route when you're allowing all of these injustices to run rampant. And finally, we go to our final segment, hockey. The Blues. The St. Louis Blues. Where do I even begin? I've been following the Blues hardcore now ever since the Rams. Because the Rams were my hardcore team to follow. Everything Rams I would look at. Now that's what I do with the Blues. I love hockey. Who doesn't? It's an amazing sport. Now, obviously, the Blues have had not the most successful history. Last time we were in the Stanley Cup Final, it was 1970. Yeah. But the thing is about the Blues is that there really isn't any problems with them. Sure, GM makes boneheaded decisions every once in a while, but really, the only issue is we just don't capitalize in the playoffs. Sometimes we don't even make it there. But that's okay with me. That's okay with me, because I love this team. All that love that I gave to the Rams and that Kroenke took, I took that, all that love I dedicated to the Rams, and I gave it to the Blues. Because at least I knew that the Blues, they were dedicated to the city. Kroenke wasn't, but the Blues and Cardinals were. The city banded together and said, you know what, Kroenke, go away. We're fine with the Blues and Cardinals. They may not be as successful in 20 years' time, but at least we will have the moral high ground. And so, that's my experience with them. But now let's focus on some other things, such as what I learned through this project. Without a doubt, the first thing I learned is that how common all these bad practices are. I did not expect it. I thought it was just a few bad apples. But no, it's more common than I would have thought and probably what you would have thought. And some of the levels could be downright severe. Horrible atrocities have been occurred, but people haven't done really anything about it. Because the only time an owner is in the spotlight for something bad is usually something that's leaked to the public about him making, or her, making some sort of derogatory comment. Some sort of photo is leaked, some sort of sting operation and they get arrested. But if they do all this crap, no one bats an eye. Heck, some people even know it's around, but don't even bother. And that's the worst part, is that now that I'm finished with this whole project, the whole series is done, and now that you have this information, I know that there are some people who will go out knowing all this is going on and not do anything. That's the problem. I didn't make this whole series to make a profit. There's no profit made from this. I don't make a cent. This is all passion project. I did not do this for money. I did this because this is going on. People don't know about it, and they need to. And the worst part is, most people aren't even going to watch this. Most people aren't going to care. Even worse, some people may watch every single minute of this series. They will know all of this information and carry on as if nothing is happening. And to me, that is the worst part. That is possibly going to happen. So, here's the final question. What do we do? What can we do? The problem is that there really isn't much we can do. Sure, we can obviously condemn these wrongdoings when they occur, but these are billionaires. They can get away with anything. You cannot underestimate the power of the dollar. Anything can be excused with money. So really, the only thing we can do is to spread awareness, gain popularity, and say, hey, look, there are some bad people running these franchises, and we need to hold them accountable. And when they do something wrong, we take that opportunity to strike. Take a look at the Los Angeles Clippers and Donald Sterling. That was a time when people fought back, but the problem was nobody knew about it, nobody cared about it until this information was leaked to the public. Then everyone decided to pounce on. We need to pounce on when they least expect it. When everything is going fine, that's when you strike. But this is a pure hypothetical, very unlikely to happen, but what is the best solution to all this? Public ownership. Now, this has nothing to do with political ideals or anything. This is just my take on how to make these sports franchises better, and that is public ownership. I do not own a franchise. I do not own a team. Rather, the city owns that team. For example, the city of St. Louis owns and controls the St. Louis Blues. Now, obviously, you're still going to have a general manager to make decisions on trades and payroll, stuff like that. But the main owner is the city. Now, not the mayor, the city as a whole. This means that you do not lose your team to somebody else. Look at Green Bay. Green Bay is a small town. How do they have an NFL franchise that's, without a doubt, the most passionate fan base? It's publicly owned. The franchise is publicly owned by the people of Green Bay. Because we all know that if it was a private ownership of the Green Bay Packers, they would have moved out of there a long time ago. Because let's be real, Green Bay is not a financially viable market. But with public ownership, good trust, good faith in its people, and public ownership, it has worked fantastically. The fan base is amazing. The history of the franchise knows no bounds. My question is, why are we not doing this with our other franchises and leagues? Why not? It benefits everyone. The city gets their team, the players can stay there, the fans are happy that they have their team. Only one part of this whole process does not get any sort of benefit out of it, and that is current owners. And you know that current owners, they want to keep their position as the top dog. They're not gonna give up that spot without a fight. Of course they wouldn't. Why would they? It's their sole income from making billions of dollars off the backs of thousands of people that they employ. So, just to recap, if we have our teams publicly owned by the city that they play in, for example, the Blues. The city of St. Louis owns the Blues. We never have to worry about relocation. Now sure, disagreements may arise, but in a civil and organized way, we can get those issues solved and everyone come to equal terms. Now that is a future of optimism for our sports leagues, because at the way we're currently at right now, it's nothing but pure toxic. Something needs to change. Someone needs to be outed. We can't let this go on anymore. You can't let injustice run rampant. You have to do something about it. And that's why I did this. I got the idea for this after the Rams got into the Super Bowl final. I decided, you know what? I'm sick of this. I'm sick of me getting pushed around. I'm sick of cities getting pushed around by these greedy billionaires. I'm done. It's time to stop this. Now, how does this stop that? It doesn't. It starts the process. It starts with me telling you, you tell your friend tells their friends, everyone starts to watch this, then everyone realizes, oh my goodness, these things are going on. Let's do something about it. And then we rally together around a good and noble cause. So that is the answer for the safety and for the benefit of our leagues, our sports players, our sports franchises, and their cities. Public ownership is more than likely the way to go with. And now, as we have finished up our final episode, I want to say thank you to everyone who has watched the entire series, everyone who supported me along the way of creating this project, everyone who shares, likes it, anything. Even if you only watch 1 minute, that is enough. From the bottom of my heart, I want to thank all of you for your contributions from the beginning all the way up to now. We don't know what the future has in store for us. But if we can come together, do good in the hearts of wrong, anything is possible. My name is Winn, and thank you for watching League of Liars.